By 2032, the Arthur M. Anderson called Coast Guard Group Sault Ste. Marie, stating, "I'm very concerned with the welfare of the steamer Edmund Fitzgerald.
Wow.
He was right in front of us experiencing a little difficulty. He was taking on a small amount of water, and none of the upbound ships have passed him. I can see no lights as before, and don't have them on radar. I just hope he didn't take a nosedive."
Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be checking out the Edmund Fitzgerald mystery by Maritime Horrors here on YouTube. Yes guys, if you don't know, November 10th is actually the anniversary of the sinking of the Edmund Fitzgerald. If you've never heard of that ship, basically it was a freighter that went down on Lake Superior in the early 70s, I want to say. I can't remember the exact date. There's a very popular song by Gordon Lightfoot that is about that wreck. If you haven't heard that song, go check it out because the song, it slaps. It's a sad song, it's very haunting. But it kind of gives you the impression of what was going on aboard that ship, during that time, right? Very, very good song. But yeah, I have not checked out any videos on the Edmund Fitzgerald. It's been a long time since I've seen like any documentary footage or anything about that. I know this isn't a documentary. This is gonna be a fella explaining it to us, basically explaining the events, what happened. But it is a very tragic story. At the end of the day, all hands lost. I believe there's 26 or 29 people aboard that ship when it went down. So yeah, very tragic story. I'm gonna be excited to learn some more about it because I know the story, kinda. I know what happened, obviously. The ship went down, but I don't know a lot of the specifics outside of song, really, right? So I am going to be interested to actually see a video about it and hopefully learn a little bit more about it. If you guys enjoyed the reaction, of course, hit that like button, subscribe for more content from me, and of course, leave your recommendations down in the comments below if you want me to check out more of this type of video. Personally, I love the history of maritime history in general. Even as horrific as shipwrecks are, I do like learning about them. It's a morbid curiosity, I suppose, right? So without any further delay, guys, let's get right into this video. We're liked up, captions on, quality is 1080p. We're full screen. Without any further delay, let's get it, guys.
On the 10th of November, 1975, the largest ship to ever sink on the Great Lakes slipped under the waters of Lake Superior.
Wow.
And took every member of its crew with it. The exact cause was a mystery that spawned a massive investigation. But the truth remains shrouded even to this day.
I believe it was transporting coal, but I could be wrong.
The Edmund Fitzgerald remains a stark reminder of the dangers that mariners face when going to sea on the waters of the Great Lakes.
Yeah. And to that point too, like a lot of people don't realize, like the Great Lakes are not an easy go of it for shipping routes, like at all. Like especially November during this time period, right? Like it's storms and it's fucking wind fronts and there's so much shit going on in the Great Lakes. It's basically mini oceans, right? But they're contained. So there's a lot of shit that can go down. They're really slept on. A lot of people don't really get just how dangerous shipping in the Great Lakes can actually be.
That mariners face when going to sea on the waters of the Great Lakes. The Great Lakes. How do you describe something so vast to someone unfamiliar with them?
Literally.
These aren't simple run-of-the-mill backyard freshwater lakes. They're as vast as seas. I could tell you they are the largest freshwater system in the world and contains 84% of North America's freshwater. In fact, they contain 20% of the world's freshwater. The largest lake is the largest lake in the world based on surface area. Lake
Superior.
This lake, aptly named Lake Superior, could fit the 4 smaller lakes of the Great Lakes inside of it.
Which is fucked.
Like, it's 350 miles wide, 100...
It's, again, very hard to conceptualize just how much fucking fresh water we're talking about here. Like, it's one thing to say, like, oh yeah, the biggest bodies of water in the world. But yeah, 20% of the world's fresh water in these lakes, all conjoined together. Like, it's a massive body of water. Like, people don't understand it, you know, until you see it, until you're there.
Lakes of the Great Lakes inside of it.
And it's fresh water, it ain't salt.
It's 350 miles wide, 160 miles long. Its average shoreline is 2,726 miles long, and it's an average of 500 feet deep, and a max of 1,332 feet deep.
Literally.
But those are just numbers. They don't give you a true scope of the lakes, or an idea
Camping
of
on
how
the Great Lakes is beautiful.
They are. What about the fact that the lakes are home to an estimated 6,000 shipwrecks?
Jesus.
And the graves
no idea.
30,000 sailors.
Wow.
These massive freshwater seas are more dangerous than most would believe. and yet they are nonetheless extremely useful. Around 125 million tons of cargo are shipped across the Great Lakes every year, 40% of that being produced from America's breadbasket, things like wheat, corn, oats, and soybeans. But another 40% are minerals and important ores, iron, taconite, coal, salt, and stone, fueling the U.S.'s huge industrial machine. In fact, our story centers around a massive powerhouse in that industry. Ordered on February 1st of 1957 by the Northwest Mutual Life Insurance Company, the SS Edmund Fitzgerald was going to be an absolute behemoth of a lake freighter. At the time, she was designed to be exactly 1 foot
Designed in
less
57,
than the maximum allowable limit on the Great Lakes.
Wow.
729 feet.
That's
This
impressive,
being
dude.
because the locks in Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, often just called the Sioux Locks, were 730 feet.
Beautiful
Her
ship.
beam was the maximum allowed limit of 75 feet. At the time of her commissioning, she was the largest ship on the Great Lakes. She would be a whopping 13,632 tons. And could
Jeez.
carry well over 25,000 tons in her hold. She had a crew of 29, and it was driven by massive steam turbine engines that pushed her along at 14 knots. Named after the president and CEO of the Northwestern Mutual Life Insurance Company, Edmund Fitzgerald, the man had a vested interest in Great Lakes shipping. His grandfather and 5 of his brothers were all mariners on the Great Lakes. On top of that, his company had large stakes in the coal and iron ore industries,
Right.
which would explain why they were willing to fit the bill for the $8.4 million ship. Just over
8.4 million, and again, that's back in the 50s they commissioned that shit, dude. Wow. So that's probably what, like a 25 million dollar ship, something like that, if I had to say. I don't know what inflation would look like, especially in American money then, but I gotta assume like 25 million, something like that around there, maybe more. Shit, dude. Wow. That's a big bill to front. But again, you got to imagine if you already have stakes in iron and coal and you're able to freight your own, like logistically able to transport your own minerals to sail. That's big shit, man. Like that, you'd make your money back easily.
willing to fit the bill for the $8.4 million ship. Just over $81 million when adjusted for inflation.
81 million. Oh my God, I
Laid
spoke too
down
soon.
on the 7th of August, 1957.
Wow.
She was commissioned the 7th of June, 1958. Now, this was where the superstitious type may take note. Her commissioning did not go off without a hitch. There were a few clear issues. A crowd of an estimated 10,000 people watched from set-up grandstands, from the piers, even some watching from rooftops to see the mighty Fitz launched.
Okay.
But when it came time for Elizabeth Fitzgerald, Edmund Fitzgerald's wife, to break the ceremonial bottle of champagne across the bow,
did it not break?
it took 3 tries. But the leery ceremony had only just started. The ship slid down the slipway and entered the water at a dangerous-looking angle. After self-righting, it sent a wave into the opposite pier and slammed into it. There was a wave of shock and excitement, and a middle-aged man from Toledo even had a heart attack and died.
What?
It was foreboding, to say the least. Any older mariner will of course tell you a bad christening is a sign of bad luck.
Yeah.
But in spite of her precarious christening,
Now, of course, I'm sure that's just old man's tales and tall tales and whatever have you, right? But like, 3 tries to break the bottle of champagne, that's fucking not great at all. And also somebody died during the launch ceremony? Like, what? I've not... Never heard of that one before, man. Literally never heard of anyone dying before the launch ceremony for a ship.
bad christening is a sign of bad luck. But in spite of her precarious christening ceremony, she continued to be outfitted. The company, in the famous words of John Hammond, spared no expense.
Of course.
Her massive power plant would make her one of the fastest freighters on the lakes at the time. Her pilot house had the most advanced navigational and charting equipment, as well as top-of-the-line radio and communications equipment. The Fitz's interior could honestly be described as lavish. 2 guest staterooms, a guest lounge, a comfortable captain's office and quarters. There was a laundry room and recreational deck, and the crew staterooms were larger than industry standards. There were 2-person rooms
Might as well
with
take
deep
advantage.
tile carpeting, many featuring tile bathrooms and personal showers.
Wow.
All of them were air-conditioned. They were furnished well with a desk, bookcases, chairs, and a closet. The lounges featured leather seats and recliners, drape-covered portholes, and a large panoramic stern-facing window that showed a beautiful view of the lake.
Wow.
They also had a full kitchen with all the amenities to provide meals to the 2 dining rooms on board. The ships would be leased by the Ogilvy Norton Mineral Firm for a 25-year
Damn, that Canadian flag
contract.
looks good up there.
They immediately made it the flagship of its Columbia Transportation Division fleet. The lavish and large behemoth was considered a reward to be attached to. They stacked their crew list with the most skilled and proven mariners in their fleet.
Wow.
She would make her maiden voyage on the 22nd of...
So, and again, it sounds like they tried to do everything right. Like they, again, spared no expense. They tried to make it seemingly, I can't hear of any like flaws in the building or anything like that right now. Maybe we'll get onto that, but it seems like they built it well and they built it to be comfortable. And again, massive fucking ship, so they're taking full advantage of that space. They're providing all the amenities to their crew. Seems like a great ship to serve on. And again, even like experience wise, they're trying to like mix like newer mariners in with the more experienced ones. They're trying to get people experience. They're trying to train them up. They're doing everything right, seemingly, as of right now. Jesus.
And proven mariners in their fleet.
I do believe this one was just
a
freak accident.
She would make her maiden voyage on the 22nd of September 1958, leaving her berth in the Rouge River near Detroit, Michigan, and sailing to Silver Bay, Minnesota to retrieve a load of taconite iron ore.
Okay.
Her very first trip, the ship set a Great Lakes tonnage record. The
59,
first of many
wow.
records the mighty Fitz would set. To those in service in the Great Lakes fleet, and to those living in lakeshore communities around the Great Lakes, Fitzgerald became something of a folk icon. The red and white monolithic vessel captured fascination and attention wherever she passed, carrying cargo loads that were thought to be impossible prior to her creation. She remained the largest until 1971, the whole time embodying the industrious spirit of the Great Lakes manufacturing and the United States.
So years, decades,
Onlookers would
without a
line the
hitch.
sea locks to watch the ship pass through. She was even nicknamed the Singing Ship due to her captain Peter Pulser. Pulser assumed command in 1966 and drove a tough ship, setting a single haul record of over 30,000 tons 4 times.
Jesus.
In 1969, the Fitz hauled a yearly haul record of 1,349,404 tons.
Wow.
The Captain Pulser was an eccentric and friendly skipper. To boost morale, he often piped music over the ship's loudhailer. Whilst passing through the Sioux locks, he was known to go onto the bridge wings with a megaphone to give facts and information to onlookers as they passed through. He remarked fondly that he still received letters about this well into his retirement.
Oh, wow.
The Fitz would receive numerous...
Seems like a cool captain. Like, that's the kind of captain you want. Drives a tough ship, but, you know, he knows when, like, to let his crew have fun. He's willing to let, like, certain things go. Like, yeah, fuck it, we can have music. Why not? What's that hurting? Yeah. And also, just a chill guy. He wants to talk about his ship. He's happy to talk about it. Seems like he loves his job. You know what I mean? That's the kind of guy you want in charge of your ship. And it sounds like, you know, he retired before the incident, but wow, you know, great guy.
Letters about this well into his retirement.
Again, seems like the crew is turned on.
The Fitz would receive numerous nicknames over her career. The Toledo Express, the pride of the American side, and of course,
Heard
Mighty
that one.
Fitz. She was the pinnacle of Great Lakes shipping, even into 1971 when she was refitted from coal firing to fuel oil firing.
American ship, obviously,
only increasing
beautiful.
her speed and endurance. By 1975, the Fitz was still well into her prime. Not even done with her initial contract and not even a third of the way through her expected service life.
Wow.
One that could have easily lasted into our modern day.
Yeah, literally.
The 9th of November 1975. At 0830, the Big Fitz is moored at the Burlington Northern Railroad docks. She begins loading 26,116 tons of taconite for a trip from Superior, Wisconsin, across Lake Superior, through the locks, and south to Detroit, Michigan.
Taconite.
The process of loading was lengthy.
What is
as it always
taconite?
was. The loading foreman and deck boss working in tandem to ensure the proper distribution of ore throughout the massive ship's hull. Too much to one side or the other and she'd risk capsizing, of course. But too much along the center line, or amidships, and she'd drag belly out of the port, or worse, hog and break her back, something that had killed several ships before her. But by 14:15, 6 hours later, she was hauling in her lines, underway, making way. As they passed out the breakwater, a Janice Armagost stood on the breakwater with her 2 kids. She was hoping to catch a glimpse of her husband, Michael Armagost, the third mate. But failing to see him, she yelled to a deckhand asking where Mike was. He responded that he was below decks. Janice would be the last person to see any of the Edmund Fitzgerald's crew alive.
Wow.
At command of the Fitz was Captain Ernest
That's super sad.
age 63. The Toledo native captain took the reins from his predecessor, Captain Pulser, in 1972, and ran a completely different ship.
So he's been captain for 3
He
years.
maintained a customary distance from the crew, maintaining a professional atmosphere.
Okay.
He was a good businessman, too, with his mind on scheduling and timetables. The company saw him in good favor, as he ensured the vessel stayed profitable.
So this guy is more by the books. He's less open with the crew, more professional, more by the books. Respectable, and seems, again, 3 years ran it without incident.
And timetables. The company saw him in good favor, as he ensured the vessel stayed profitable. But he wasn't disliked or even off-putting.
Yeah.
He was very respected for his skills and professionalism. The season would soon be over. This was likely one of Fitzgerald's last trips before putting up for winter layover, the time of year when ships either dry docked or docked for the winter to receive repairs.
Right.
The locks would close and the lakes would freeze over up until the spring thaw. There was rumor that this would be the skipper's last season. Captain McSorley had been to sea since he was 18, and a captain of ships since 1951.
Wow.
The weather that day had looked promising. The National Weather Service had been tracking...
And again, all the guys back then, all the mariners back then, mariners for life, you know, they've been doing it fucking forever. Crazy shit, man. Again, I great respect to people who do that profession, spending most of their life at sea like that. That's crazy, you know?
The weather that day had looked promising. The National Weather Service had been tracking a big November storm, but predicted it would pass south of Lake Superior. But by the late hours of the 9th, that proved to be false. The barometer was quickly dropping, and it was evident that the storm would hit Superior, and hard. Around 1630, another freighter, the freighter Arthur M. Anderson, would be departing Two Harbors, Minnesota, just ahead of the Edmund Fitzgerald, but heading on a parallel course. The slightly older Anderson was initially shorter than Fitzgerald upon construction, but after a refit, she was lengthened to be a bit longer than Fitzgerald, though was noticeably slower. She would be passed by Big Fitz before too long. As they steamed together towards the locks, the Fitzgerald heading for Detroit, and the Anderson for Gary, Indiana. The captain of the Anderson was Captain Jesse Bernie Cooper, a veteran of the business just as assuredly as Captain McSorley. He knew the capabilities of his own ship as well as the Edmund Fitzgerald. And while he wasn't afraid of the weather system approaching the Superior Lake, he knew to respect November storms, just as well as any mariner of the lakes that were worth their salt. He kept his eye on it, even as the Fitz passed her and took the lead. As the day of the 9th turned into the 10th, the two ships began to communicate. Both ships were equipped with weather observation and reporting equipment used by the National Weather Service to assist in tracking and reporting weather systems across the Great Lakes. The two skippers agreed that the storm looked like it would be a doozy. Together, they altered their course to hug the Canadian shore to try and shelter from the encroaching weather system. But as Cooper tracked the storm, he knew they would get hit before they could reach the relative safety of Whitefish Bay, Michigan. November storms aren't just passing squalls on the lakes.
No.
Both McSorley and Cooper knew this. As the waves built and the winds blew, one could likely stand on the bridge and look aft at the spar deck, with her many deck coverings. If you watched, you'd likely see the ship bowing, the deck bouncing up and down as the rear deck house rose and fell. But believe it or not, that was a good thing. The two captains would likely remember a time when big straight deck freighters were in heavy November storms, and they didn't flex.
Yeah, true.
November 18th,
Yeah, flex is good. When they didn't flex, it meant that the fucking ship just had a risk of snapping, and that was the end of a lot of those freighters back in the day. I think it had something to do with the alloy. They upgraded like the steel or the alloy to do with shipbuilding, and it allowed for a bit more flex to the ship. So when it hits that wave, it's able to actually like kind of bounce with it a little bit rather than just it stays solid. And now all the weight in your cargo hold is now pressing on the bottom of your ship, which is causing it to fucking, it's where you get cracks in your frame and whatnot, right? It's bad shit.
And they didn't flex.
Somebody let me know a little bit more about that. That might have been a really stupid way to explain it.
1958. The Carl D. Bradley was underway in Lake Michigan heading north.
Bradley,
the ship
okay.
was 639 feet, and built in 1927.
Right.
And this wasn't its first storm. Steaming from Gary, Indiana to Manitowoc, the ship was thrust into the path of two converging storms. The temperature plunged with the barometer. Winds skyrocketed and seas swelled.
This also went
As
down
Bradley
too,
steamed
didn't it?
north, she was harangued by winds in the excess of 50 knots and
Yeah.
25 to 30-foot seas.
Jesus.
At around 1700, the first mate noticed that the stern of the ship was sagging. In horror, the captain looked back to watch his ship split in half. He sounded the alarm and ordered an abandoning of the ship. The stern swamped too quickly to launch the two lifeboats there. A life raft was tossed off the bow, and 4 sailors piled in as the stricken freighter slipped beneath. The 4 men battled through the night, being tossed from the raft over and over, and swimming back through the cold water over and over. At some point during the night, one man failed to clamber back into the raft,
Damn.
and then another. By daybreak, the Coast Guard found only 2 out of the 33 crewmen aboard.
Jesus,
The
man.
rest were lost to the lake. In a shockingly similar incident, the 630-foot SS Daniel J. Morrill was
Daniel J.
steaming
Morrill.
north on Lake Huron
I haven't
for
heard of
Thunder
this
Bay,
one.
Michigan, on the 29th of November, 1966.
Wow.
Just like the Carl D. Bradley, she was in a November storm, nose into the seas and flexing with the waves. Similarly, the ship shuddered and flexed, going into her death throes at 2 in the morning. Panicked crewmen leapt into the 34-degree water, where they would never be seen again. 4 men loaded into a raft on the bow, waiting for the ship to sink. Bizarrely, the men spotted a ship sailing past in the storm, only to realize it was the aft section of the Morrell, split free with her engine still pushing her ahead.
Oh my
The ship
god.
sank beneath the 4 men, left to bob in Lake Huron in the heavy cold storm. The ship was reported overdue, and the U.S. Coast Guard began a search, locating the life raft 40 hours later. They hopped on board and found only watchman Dennis Hale had survived,
Oh my
half
god.
frozen, wearing only boxers, a pea coat, and a life jacket. His 3 shipmates had frozen to death.
God.
A subsequent
Because during that, like, again, November right now, like today, and this is the first day, at least in southern Ontario, we got a lot of snow on the ground right now. You know what I mean? Like, the temperatures are fucking below freezing right now. This week specifically. Like, this week is when it starts to get bad here, like, if it isn't already, you know? And I live in a pretty southern Ontario zone, right? So it's like a lot nicer. It's a lot more comfortable, but yeah, man, you'd freeze to death. And if you get any sort of wet, you know, which obviously you're on a lake and there's waves and shit, you get wet, you're just gonna fucking freeze through instantly. It doesn't matter what you do to stay warm. You can't prevent it.
His 3 shipmates had frozen to death. A subsequent survey of the wreck had found the stern section had sailed 5 nautical miles before sinking. 2 massive freighters, 2 November storms, 2 huge losses of life. The lake was infamous for November storms, and here Fitzgerald and Anderson found themselves in one, flexing as they forged their way through. But unlike the Morrell and the Bradley, these ships flexing was actually a good thing. The truth is, being built in 1927 and 1906 respectively, these ships were almost pioneers.
Yeah.
Some of the earliest and largest lake freighters, they were built from rigid, brittle steel.
Yeah.
The ships were made to not flex, so traveling over these large 20 to 35-foot seas put their keels under immense strain as they hogged and sagged. Eventually something was going to yield, their keels or the seas. The Anderson and Fitzgerald being built in the 50s meant they were built with superior steel and designed to flex in heavy seas. And as the ships came about and steamed south into the eye of the storm, aiming for Whitefish Bay, flex they did. By this time the faster Edmund Fitzgerald had passed the Arthur M. Anderson, but both ships were within radio and radar range and were conversing regularly about the deteriorating weather. The winds had jumped up to 40 knots, and waves were easily 10 to 12 foot in height. But they were coming from the south, putting the bows of the ships into the sea, which, despite a bit rougher, was actually better for stability and steerage. But Captain Burney of the Anderson contacted McSorley, predicting that once the storm progressed, the winds would likely
They're right
shift.
outside of it too. I just want to look at that map again.
Actually,
Like, they're fucking almost there too. That's the shit thing about this. Like, they almost got there. The worst possible place to be in the fierce storm. Damn, dude.
from the south, putting the bows of the ships into the seas, which, despite a bit rougher, was actually better for stability and steerage. But Captain Burney of the Anderson contacted McSorley, predicting that once the storm progressed, the winds would likely shift by almost 180 degrees, and his prediction would turn out nearly spot on. As night turned to day, the ships began approaching the islands outside Whitefish Bay, Michipicoten Island and Caribou Island. The depth of Superior giving way to shallower shoals, and of course shallower water leads to higher building seas. By 1400, the ships had passed through the eye of the storm. The winds shifted. By this time, they were coming from the north at 42 knots, giving them a long fetch and plenty of open water to build, creating a substantial stern sea as the ships passed into the shallows around the islands. At this time, snow began to fall pretty heavily on the lake. The Arthur M. Anderson crew lost visual sighting of the Edmund Fitzgerald. This would be the last time anyone saw the ship. They could only see her on radar from then on.
I see.
By 1500, Captain Cooper decided to bring his ship farther to the east, putting her slightly abeam of the winds and seas. A necessary risk as the man saw it, trying to avoid the infamous 6-fathom shoal that ran close to Caribou Island. A fathom, of course, being a measurement of 6 feet, meaning under average conditions the 6-fathom shoal was around 36 feet deep, the exact draft of the Arthur M. Anderson. The Fitzgerald draft was a less substantial 26 feet, but one should also consider the nature of the growing seas. Dropping into a 10 to 15 foot trough of a swell would bring the ship's keel dangerously close to the bottom.
Yeah.
But inexplicably, based upon radar plot from the Anderson's bridge, Fitzgerald didn't do the same, but in fact turned slightly towards Caribou Island. But unfortunately, because they didn't log the radar plot, this is all based purely on the crew's testimony. But according to Captain Cooper, he vehemently believed that the Fitzgerald passed directly over the 6-fathom shoal. By now, Cooper was on the bridge, as well as the first mate and second mate. They watched the radar nervously to see if the ship stopped or slowed. To their dismay, at 1530, the voice of Captain McSorley came over the radio. According to the captain, they had a railing down on the spar deck, had lost a few vent covers, and were taking on water, enough to make the mighty Fitz list. He stated he would check down, or reduce speed, so that the slower Anderson could catch up with her. Captain Cooper asked if he had energized his dewatering pumps, to which McSorley responded yes, both of them. Cooper agreed to catch up to the Fitzgerald, which by now was around 17 nautical miles ahead of the Anderson. Both ships were about 4 to 5 hours from the relative safety of Whitefish Bay. But the issues would only be compounded. Fitzgerald once again called the Arthur M. Anderson less than an hour later. Ernest McSorley informed Bernie Cooper that both of his radars were inoperable and that he was driving blind, asking if the Anderson could assist in navigating the Fitz with her own radar, which of course they agreed to.
Right.
By 1630 it was growing.
What a bad situation. You just see the deterioration. Hey, we're taking on water, vent coverings down, we're operating our pumps, we're going to slow down speed so you can catch up with us just in case. Hour later, hey, our radars are down. We're flying blind here. Can you assist? Like, it's just a deterioration over time, and you can see it happening very, very rapidly here.
With her own radar, which of course they agreed to. By 1630, it was growing dark. That, coupled with the driving snow, meant visibility may as well have been none. The winds were logged at 58 knots from the north, driving the stern seas to a terrifying 12 to 18 feet. Shortly after their conversation, Captain McSorley called the Coast Guard station at Grand Marais, Michigan. He had been attempting to use his radio direction finding equipment to get a fix off the beacon on Whitefish Point, but couldn't receive the signal. Without his radar, this would be one of his only ways of navigating. But the Coast Guard reported that the beacon was offline, and they were trying to get it back up and running.
Oh, that's
McSorley
shitty.
was navigating blind. By 1700, the Arthur M. Anderson recorded that she was around 15 nautical miles to the stern of Edmund Fitzgerald, still assisting in navigating the stricken ship with their own radar as they slowly closed the distance. By now the seas were growing, waves flowing over the spar decks of both ships. By 1800, Captain Cooper laid below as the first mate maintained the watch, reporting that the seas were as high as 25 feet. By 1900, Fitzgerald was only around an hour from the safety of Whitefish Bay. The first mate on the Anderson called Captain McSorley to inform him that the Fitz was around 10 nautical miles ahead of them and around 15 nautical miles from the lee of Crisp Point. 10 minutes after that, at 1910, the Anderson picked up a contact on her radar, farther to the south. Calling the Fitzgerald, he passed on, "There's a target 19 miles ahead of us, so the target is 9 miles on ahead." Captain McSorley asked, "Well, am I going to clear?" To which the mate responded, "Yes, he's going to pass to the west of you." Fitzgerald responded with a simple, "Well, fine." Offhandedly, the mate asked before signing off, "Oh, by the way, how are you making out with your problems?" To which McSorley responded, "We are holding our own." This was the last anyone heard from the crew of the Edmund Fitzgerald. The mate signed off with, "Okay, fine. I'll be talking to you later." By the end of this conversation, the captain returned to the bridge, to which he observed the radar contact of the Fitzgerald around 9 nautical miles ahead. Shortly thereafter, snow subsided and visibility opened up dramatically. The bridge crew on the Anderson searched for the lights of the Fitzgerald, but couldn't see them, only spotting a handful of northbound freighters, the Nanfree, the Benfree, and the Avafors. Captain Cooper immediately believed the Fitzgerald had lost power and told everyone to keep an eye out for her silhouette. In 1920, only 10 minutes after their last radio call, Anderson's radar was picking up 3 radar contacts, the northbound freighters, but no Edmund Fitzgerald. Captain Cooper began calling for the Fitzgerald over the radio, but received nothing with each call. He called another ship to ensure that his radio was functioning, which it was. Soon after, he called the Coast Guard station at Sault Ste. Marie to report his fears, but received no follow-up. Afterwards, he called the northbound freighters that confirmed they had no radar contact of the Fitz, nor any sightings of it. By 2032, the Arthur M. Anderson called Coast Guard Group Sault Ste. Marie, stating, "I'm very concerned with the welfare of the steamer Edmund Fitzgerald.
Wow.
He was right in front of us experiencing a little difficulty. He was taking on a small amount of water, and none of the upbound ships have passed him. I can see no lights as before, and don't have them on radar. I just hope he didn't take a nosedive." The Coast Guard began performing...
I want to say good on that other crew there, because like they're on top of that instantly. Like they were in communications. Last communication was we're holding our own. Okay, fine. But now you're off radar, and they're literally contacting everyone. Hey, this ship is fucking gone. Like we can't find it. We don't know where it is. We have no communications. I'm fearing the worst here. It's not a good storm. Like they were having troubles. Good on him for like he's attempting to do everything he can right now, the crew of this ship and the captain specifically, to pass it on, pass the word up. Hey, like shit's going on right now. He's trying to do everything he can.
I just hope he didn't take a nosedive. The Coast Guard began performing radio calls, when at 2100, the Anderson officially declared the Fitzgerald missing.
Yeah.
And the Coast Guard immediately began a multi-unit search.
The Anderson,
even
Arthur M.
asking the
Anderson.
Anderson to come about and brave the storm once more to assist in the search, to which they, of course, obliged. The Coast Guard scrambled helicopters from Coast Guard Station Traverse City, the U.S. Coast Guard cutter Naugatuck from Sault Ste. Marie, the U.S. Coast Guard cutter Woodrush from Duluth, Minnesota, even fixed-wing aircraft from the Canadian Coast Guard. Aircraft and rescue vessels began a massive search in the area. None of the 29 crew were found, dead or alive. The first bit of wreckage was found by the Anderson. At 0800 the next morning, they spotted pieces of one lifeboat, then another. Pieces of life jackets, a life raft, oars, air tanks, a heaving line, etc. But no personal effects, and no bodies. The damage to the lifeboats indicated they were still locked in their cradles when they were wrenched from the ship. They weren't launched. An oil slick was found, a bit of diesel oil from the bow thruster, and some Bunker C main propulsion fuel, but it was a very small amount. The water at the bottom was so cold that the viscosity of the oil increased to the point that it would no longer leak from the wreck. But the wreck wouldn't be pinpointed until the 14th of November, when side-scan sonar would identify 2 large objects in the bottom. They would scan it several times, but couldn't conclude it was the Edmund Fitzgerald for certain. It wouldn't be until May of the next year when the Navy brought out their Curve 3 unmanned underwater vehicle. Equipped with an underwater camera, the vehicle was able to get visual confirmation that the wreck was in fact the Edmund Fitzgerald. Sitting at the bottom in 530 feet of water, she was split into 2 sections only around 200 feet separated. the bow sitting flat on her keel upright, a huge impact area in front of her. Her stern flipped over and slightly at an angle, with an enormous debris field spilled out between the two sections. At first, there were no remains documented. Now came the hard part, investigating just what had happened.
And that's a crazy picture to see, just how it went down. Like, you can see, fucking thing just split right in half. Right in half. Like, there's no chance. With how quickly that probably happened, they were probably fine one minute. The next minute, your ship is literally breaking in half. You don't even have time to get to the lifeboats. Like, that's horrific. Like, there's nothing you can do about that. It's just such a shit way to go, man.
Coast Guard and NTSB launched a massive investigation poring over everything. Eyewitness testimonies from the Arthur M. Anderson's crew, testimony from the loaders from the Burlington Northern Railroad docks, seeing her previous and past inspections, testimony from past crewmen and captains. They looked at the wreckage and logs kept from the Coast Guard, other ships in the area, weather reports, etc. Finally, after months of investigations, the Coast Guard released their final report, with a conclusion to their findings. It was believed that the clamps on the hatch coverings had failed, or were improperly secured, leading to a slow and steady flooding of the cargo hold. As waves rolled over to the spar deck, they caused the hold to fill with water. Slowly, the Edmund Fitzgerald lost stability until she plunged beneath the waves and sank to the bottom of Lake Superior. But many disagreed. In fact, the president of the Lake Carriers Association, former Coast Guard Vice Admiral Paul E. Trimble, wrote the NTSB and U.S. Coast Guard denouncing their findings and stating what they concluded was absolutely incorrect. Theories began to circulate, ranging from things such as massive rogue waves to suggesting the Fitzgerald had underwater damage from striking the 6-fathom shoal. Others pointed to a hull inspection performed about a week beforehand that came up with fractures in the ship's hull, suggesting she broke up similarly to the Bradley and Morel a few decades prior.
Well, based upon how the ship is split apart,
with the official report and sought out to disprove it themselves. Subsequent dives were performed on the wreck to try and pry into the secrets of Mighty Fitz, looking over everything from hatch covers to the integrity of the keel to stress points on the ship, until finally in 1994, a body was discovered. An unidentified crewman wearing coveralls and a cork vest. He lay near the bow on the lake floor, facing upwards to the surface on his back. Who was he? How had he gotten to the outside of the hull? Why was he wearing a cork vest? Unfortunately, we may never know. What were those final minutes like? What had happened after McSorley left the radio? Why was no distress caller Mayday made, despite someone presumably being within arm's distance of the radio? Had the ship truly made a nosedive, or did she slowly split apart at the surface? Unfortunately, we may never know. As of 2005, the Ontario Heritage Act put an end to dives on the Edmund Fitzgerald, declaring the site a burial ground. What we now know may be all we ever know. The truth of what happened to those 29 men aboard Fitzgerald will...
What do you guys think about that? Genuine question here. Like, I got mixed opinions on it. But what do you guys think about that, it being declared a burial ground and no more dives taking place there? Do you guys think that's the right decision? Do you think that's the respectful decision? I mean, at this point, it's the 70s. They've concluded many dives, even up well into the 90s, early 2000s. You know, is there really much more to gain from it, unfortunately? You know, like that's, I guess, or is it more respectful to leave it alone at that point? I'm actually genuinely curious on your guys' thoughts. Let me know.
All we ever know. The truth of what happened to those 29 men aboard Fitzgerald will go with them to the bottom. So I'm sure you're wondering what I think happened, and to be honest, I do have my theories. But I'm practically a layman in this field. I was not an investigator in the Coast Guard. I was a navigator and coxswain. Instead, I want to know, what do you think happened? Comment your theory, and discuss with others in the comments. Do you believe the official U.S. Coast Guard report, or do you think it was something else entirely? Thank you so much for watching to the end. If you'd like to support the channel, you can do so by simply liking and subscribing, and sharing with your friends. But if you'd like to show your support, as well as help support my underpaid channel artist, she designed some awesome merch for the channel. You can get some cool shirts, masks, or if you're a true sailor, a coffee mug.
Wow.
Just use the link in the description.
Good looking merch.
I'll be honest, this
I need to get my
video
own
should
merch
have been
too.
released weeks ago, but right when I was about to release it, a bigger channel released a video on the exact same thing. So it took me a bit to build up the courage to release it, and I'm glad I did.
I think you got the biggest video now, man.
If you'd like to learn even more about the Edmund Fitzgerald, I definitely recommend picking up Mighty Fitz by Michael Schumacher.
Ooh.
It's an absolute wealth of information, and really helped me with researching this video. But, all the same, fair winds and following seas, shipmates.
Awesome video. Wow. Really like Maritime Horrors videos there. He does an awesome narration job, but what a horrific tragedy that occurred there. Again, I don't know. I think it probably split up on the surface. I know that probably the theory is that it went under and then split up on its way down. I think it probably split on the surface based on the fact that they didn't launch lifeboats. I feel like if it started going down, and again, it's hard to say, rogue waves, you know, the storm itself, the conditions that they were under, it's extremely hard to say how quickly they would have truly went down, like nose downed. Probably pretty quick, I'd have to assume, but I'd still think they would have been able to get a lifeboat or two off. I'd hope, you know what I mean? But who knows, right? It's just the circumstances and the confusion of the situation, right? Yeah, horrific tragedy. You hate to see that happen, but very informative video. And I thought, you know, on the anniversary of it happening, you know, we pay respects. We learn a little bit more about this incident together. I thought it'd be fitting. So thank you guys for tuning in. If you guys enjoyed the reaction, hit that like button, of course, subscribe for more content from me, and of course, leave your recommendations down in the comments below. Big thank you to all of our members, all of our Hastati, our Triarii, our Principe, Dagenhart, and of course, our Prefects, Hobbit, and Fear. I appreciate you guys. And yeah, come on down and join our Discord, guys, because it's awesome to see you guys there. Without any further delay, this has been Centurion, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace, guys.